Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you are watching my walkthrough for The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild for Nintendo Wii U and Switch. In this video, we're going to be getting these 3 remaining runes here on the Great Plateau. So we're continuing on where we left off. We just got the Magnesis rune, and now we're continuing on to the southeast, and there is a shrine over here on the far eastern side of the Great Plateau, which you can see is a red pin on my minimap. So that is our destination, and along the way, I am grabbing the metal chest that was inside the nearby pool, using Magnesis to grab that. That's actually part of the reason why I went in this order, was so that we could get those goodies along the way. By the way, whenever you're fighting style enemies, these skeletal enemies, they appear at night. They pretty much die instantaneously with just about any weapon. You smack them and they'll immediately fall down. And if you can hit their head, they'll die instantaneously after that. Also, by the way, you can one-shot them by simply shooting their head with an arrow. So that's another thing you can do to kill them instantly as well. Style enemies only appear at night, so if you really don't want to deal with them, you can technically go find a campfire and sleep until morning, just to make sure you don't have to deal with them at all. In this next area, there's a whole bunch of these Guardian ruins, and you can walk up to them and press A to collect the goodies. However, be warned that some of these Guardians are actually still alive. This particular variety is called a Decayed Guardian, and there are 3 of them in this area. This one is in the middle, is probably the one that most of you will encounter. I'd recommend you save real quick, and there's a couple different ways you can defeat it. The most traditional method is to use a shield bash. You do this by holding down L2 while to target the enemy, and then facing towards it. If you have a shield equipped, then you can press A at just the right time to shield bash, and if you do it at the right timing, you can actually reflect its laser back at it, and this will instantly kill it, and this is awesome. Now, the timing is a little tricky. It might take a little getting used to, so that's why I recommend you save right before you fight it. Also, fun fact, when you save and load, it resets the area, so you can actually, technically, as a way of getting past Guardians, you can save and then run forward a little bit, then save again, and then load that save. This will reset the area, which causes their attack animation to reset, so it's also a trick for getting past them if you don't want to deal with them. Anyways, another method of dealing with them, instead of using a shield bash, is you can shoot them in the eye with an arrow. This will stun them, and allows you to run forward and punch them with various weapons. However, they do have a lot of health, so that method will break a lot of your weapons because it would take so much weapon durability to do so. So I'd highly recommend that you use a shield bash and get used to it, because we're going to have to do that a lot later in the game, and having some of those items they drop is pretty cool early on. Next, you want to climb on the nearby wall, and there is a chest here that has the Nintendo Switch shirt. This only has 1 armor, and this is only if you have the DLC. There's no particular reason to grab this one, it's just for cool points basically, although you can sell it for 15 rupees. So yeah, you'll only have this item if you this chest will only be here if you have the DLC, but it's not really that big a deal, and honestly, the defense of it is the exact same as the old shirt, there's no difference. Now, these Stalkoblins actually did not, die very fast. I'm actually not sure what's up with that. Regardless, they do disappear after just a moment because I destroyed both of their heads. And one thing you can do, by the way, with these style enemies is a lot of them will drop their arms when they fall apart, so you can smack their head real quick and then pick up their arm and use it to defeat them. One trick with that, actually, is you can just throw their arms. They don't have much durability anyways, so you can just have, a weapon slot dedicated to just throwing weapons, so you can, throw that weapon and then it'll smack them in the head, they'll fall over, you pick up the arm, then throw that one too, because, as I was explaining earlier, thrown weapons do double damage. So if you can get good at aiming with the throw, you can actually do a lot of damage to enemies, and very useful against weak enemies like that drop weapons a lot. Because here's kind of the thing, you throw the weapon, you do double damage, which is more likely to hit that damage threshold where they fall over and drop their weapon anyways, and then you just pick up that weapon and throw that weapon at them. So you can use, if you get really good at throwing, it's very powerful. Just like Smash Bros. I guess it's more like catching is really the advanced tactic. That's the thing that's really hard to time and pull off in Smash Bros. But anyways, moving on, here in this next shrine we get our next rune, which is the Remote Bomb. And it comes in 2 different varieties, and each of which have a separate cooldown, which is a very handy tip for you, by the way. Anyways, we can use either the circle or square bomb to blow things up. How it works is you select the rune first by pressing up on the D-pad, use the right analog stick to move over to select which rune you want to use, and then you throw the bomb. You either press L to pull it up, then you can either set it down with A or throw it with R1. At that point, you can then detonate the bomb whenever you want, and we're going to use it to go through all these cracked blocks. So I realize it's a lot of stuff happening real quick right there. Now, as soon as you go through the first area, there is some more cracked blocks off to the right where it is hiding an optional chest that has goodies in it. Now, you can grab this weapon. This particular one is actually a Traveler's Claymore, which is the 2-handed version of the Traveler's Sword. A lot of items in Breath of the Wild are actually in tiers, so they have a one-handed, a two-handed, and a spear variety of that. So, for example, I'm wearing the Boko Spear. Meanwhile, I've been using Boko Clubs, which is the one-handed variety of the same tier of weapon. It's up to you to decide on your preference as far as what you like, but just so you know, like the names, the prefix, whatever, will tell you the quality of the weapons. That's a traveler's weapon is what we just got, which is pretty good. Now for this next area, what you need to do is switch to a square bomb and set it on the platform so that it doesn't roll off. And then once it gets over to the other side, then you can detonate it while you're not on the platform. I think it's actually technically possible to put it at like one corner of the platform and you stand on the other corner of the platform so you don't blow yourself up, but that's kind of the idea. That's the solution for that puzzle, is you're supposed to blow it up while you're not on there. Bombs hurt quite a bit, by the way. In this next room, we have a bunch of these, I'm not even sure what you'd call these pushing blocks, and they'll fling things across to the other side. They have a glowing orb there that's actually, there's no point to it, it's just to draw attention to it so that you understand the concept of flinging things across the way. So the far left one, you can get on it to have it fling you across. You can open the chest there to get an amber, which is a nice little goodie. And then continue on to the right side, and we don't actually have to do anything with that glowing sphere at all. You want to switch to a circle bomb, put it inside the bugle-looking thing, and then this will make it fall into the platform. You don't actually have to do that. You can totally just set it on this platform directly. But regardless, so fling it across to the other side, detonate it to blow it up, and then this will allow you to climb up the nearby ladder so that you can get to the end of this shrine. But yeah, bombs have been a staple in all of the Zelda games so far. Like every single Zelda game, the main series anyway, so far has had bombs, except for Adventure of Link. But we don't talk about that game. I'm just kidding. I actually really like Adventure of Link. I will say, though, I actually would be really intrigued to see another side-scrolling Zelda. Not so much in the combat-focused like that one was, the RPG elements, but actually just to see like how they do puzzles and stuff. Like I'd be really interested to see like kind of like a 3D looking thing, where you have like 3D backgrounds in the background, kind of like some of the more recent Metroid 3DS games, or like some of the more recent Kirby games, for example. To see like that, but for a Zelda game, where it's side-scrolling and there's puzzles where you're pushing blocks and you're interacting with things and hookshotting across stuff, and I don't know. I'd be really interested to see what they do with some of the, like, just the ability, or the idea of having more vertical puzzles as opposed to horizontal, top-down perspective. I'd be interested to see what they would do with that nowadays. Part of the reason I'm intrigued by that is I feel like it would be less development time than a full-fledged 3D game, and so I feel like we'd get an awesome game sooner. But I'd be interested to see what they would do with those limitations / capabilities, you know? So once you exit the Baij shrine, I don't know how you pronounce any of these, the Baij shrine, you can then blow up the nearby cracked blocks to have easier access to the entrance, although it doesn't really matter anymore, and then continue on towards the far south. Now at this point, there's actually a bunch of enemies along the way, and look at this! We're finally fast-forwarding through things. Whoa, welcome to the walkthrough has just upgraded. This game, I'm going to be fast-forwarding a lot as we're running around. There's not really too much to say about this. For example, I'm just killing some style enemies and keys along the way. Up ahead, there is actually a small enemy encampment. I think this one's kind of fun. Especially at night, you can sneak up on the enemies really easily. So something you can do is you can duck down again by just pressing, like clicking in the left analog stick, and you can sneak around this way so you make less noise. Now these bokoblins up ahead are actually asleep. There's a couple different ways of dealing with this. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to steal their weapons ahead of time. So I'm dropping a shield, making sure I have an open slot for my shield, my bow, and my melee weapon. So there's one of each right here. You can just walk up onto this log right here and collect these things. So there we go, I just got one of everything, so when these guys wake up, they're not actually going to be able to grab any weapons. You don't have to do that, I just thought it would be kind of fun, and to notice it just turned day, so he woke up. Anyways, so then I shot the nearby courser bee honey, which made the bees appear. Unfortunately, they touched the flame, which apparently scared them off. That was sad. I was trying to get them to... Normally, they'll actually chase the bokoblins around. They'll chase whoever is closest, so if you like cause the tree to fall over or whatever, then the bees will chase after you and hurt you instead. But normally they'll totally distract the bokoblins for you, and you can run forward and kill them while they're distracted with the bees. Anyways, you don't have to steal their weapons and walk away, of course. You can always just attack them directly. And in fact, if you sneak up on them and press Y while ducked next to them, you will sneak attack them from behind, and you can do a lot of damage to them that way as well, which is a great way to initiate. So something I'd recommend you do now that we have bombs is whenever you see an apple tree, just go ahead and blow it up with a bomb. This will make it fall over, and all of the apples will fall down for easy collection, which is awesome. But then after you collected those, then you can go ahead and blow up the fallen tree again, and this will cause wood to appear, which you can then collect. We're going to need wood throughout the game, and honestly, like, if you're just kind of picking it up as you progress and move along, you'll get, like, more than enough wood for the most part, just for general playing, I guess. So that's one way you can collect apples. It's just way easier than climbing the trees themselves, and you're getting wood in the process. So it's just a smart thing to do overall. Up ahead, there's a bunch of goodies you can collect. I would recommend you get some of these in passing. Early on, this is super powerful, including all these mushrooms, the spicy peppers, and also the summerwing butterflies. Summerwing butterflies can get scared off if you don't sneak up on them, so just kind of keep an eye out for them rather than running right past them. But if you sneak up on them and collect them, you'll get several of them, and ideally you have a couple of them for this upcoming elixir that we need to craft, and I'll explain more about that here in a little bit. So one of the things you want to watch out for is try to collect some butterflies along the way. Up ahead, there is another enemy encampment. These are all red bokoblins, and the ones that are on top of the towers usually have a horn on them. Unfortunately, unlike Skyward Sword, we cannot collect the horn from them, but you can defeat them before they alert anybody else if you're really careful. Ideally, you get a headshot. So there's all these memes online of how Breath of the Wild is all about setting things on fire, and I'm going to show you why that's so powerful here in a moment. I think a lot of people actually don't understand how fire effects work. So you can pull out your bow by pressing the R2 button, and then while your bow is out, you can walk through a flame to set it on fire. Now at this point, you have essentially a fire arrow. You can then shoot enemies to set them on fire, which will steadily burn up their wooden equipment. Now I also walked on the opposite side of the flames to cause this other bokoblin to walk through it and set his weapon on fire, and that'll eventually burn up. We do want to avoid setting our stuff on fire, unless you're doing it on purpose. Press the Y button to get your melee weapon out. Don't sprint so that you don't put your weapon away, and then you can throw your flaming weapon at an enemy to set them on fire. So that's another way of doing that. Now, fire is pretty awesome, and it's all well and good. However, the most powerful effect of fire is either to make their weapons burn. Otherwise, you want to do damage with fire. The best way to do that actually is to set grass on fire. Watch the grass that this bokoblin is in front of. I just set that grass on fire in front of him, and it instantly killed it. What it's doing is it does 10 damage per every 0.5 seconds after they've been standing in it for a second. So it takes a little second for it to like wind up and get ready, and then it's like boom, 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 boom. Anyways, in case you didn't realize that, that's a lot of damage. Like the Boko Club itself does 4 damage, so 10 damage per 0.5 seconds is a lot of damage. A lot. Yeah, but that's really how you take advantage of fire. So you'll notice there, like, the most effective thing, like in that case, it was a red bokoblin. He didn't have much health anyways. If I had thrown that Boko Club at his face, it would have just killed him instantly. But instead, I threw it at the grass in front of the enemy, and that actually does a lot more damage. Again, we're talking about weak enemies, but if it was, like, say, a black or, like, a gold bokoblin, where they have so much more health, the best thing I can do is actually throw my flaming Boko Club at the grass, and then, like, stand just outside of the flaming grass. The enemy walks over to me, and then he just stands there, because he's right in front of me, and he's, like, trying to smack me or whatever. And meanwhile, he's like, ooh, 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 and he just kills himself. He dies so fast. So yeah, fire is very, very powerful in the right situations, but that's actually the best way to use it. So even though we don't have any elemental weapons right now, you can still use fire at this point in the game with certain situations like that. So for example, up ahead here we have a wooden barrier, and I want to get rid of it, but I'm going to go ahead and use some of the nearby Boko Clubs. So I have one already, and like as you can see, all these enemies have these, so I don't care about this. I'm going to actually use this to throw at it. I can totally do the same thing with a regular arrow. I just walk through that with while I have my bow extended, and I'll light the tip of my arrow on fire. However, I only have like 3 or 4 arrows at the moment, so I don't want to waste it. So I'm just using one of these free Boko Clubs. I have more of them lying around anyways. So you can go ahead and do that. And if you pick up your flaming weapon soon enough, you can actually just re-pick it up. I didn't do that because I wanted to watch out for these bees. The best way to deal with bees surrounding coarser bee honey is actually to throw a bomb at them, and this will take care of them instantly. You don't have to, like, you can run in there and you can shoot at the coarser bee honey with an arrow and then run away and then wait for the bees to go away and then go get the coarser bee honey. It's just dumb. Just use a bomb. It's way faster. Anyways, once you get past that barrier, you will have a chest that has bomb arrows. And I'm actually not sure of the price off the top of my head right now, but the price of bomb arrows is very expensive. So we actually just made a whole bunch of money right there by collecting 5 bomb arrows right there. It's awesome. There are a bunch of different types of wild animals throughout Breath of the Wild that they're not enemies or anything, they don't fight you, but you can hunt them to get various types of meat. That bird I just killed gave me just a regular bird thigh, or a bird drumstick, which is the worst type of meat. It's not worth very much. It doesn't heal for very much, it doesn't sell for very much, it's just kind of blah. But I was just killing it just because I might as well. I did use a precious arrow to do that, but as I've explained several times already, if I really want to get arrows, I can. In fact, there's actually a way to trick bokoblins into giving you tons and tons of arrows that I haven't really even super talked about yet. I'll probably talk about that here in a little while. Maybe I'll do that during a lull when we're climbing or something. Anyways, Move up ahead, you'll see the old man, and he is currently felling trees with a woodcutter's axe. This is a subtle hint from the developers explaining the fact that you even can do that. So you can walk up to a tree, use a woodcutter's axe. I'm currently using the one that we got earlier where we first met the old man. There was a woodcutter's axe there. And he will actually set the one he's holding down in just a little bit. So if you just follow him, you'll get a woodcutter's axe from him. Anyways, the best way to angle these things is actually to use the R analog stick on your controller to aim your camera vision and then just inch your way forward. So I did that here for the second tree so that I could make a tree fall and land across that gap to create a bridge. That is the solution to the puzzle they're trying to do. However, there's a couple different ways to get across that gap, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit, but that is this particular solution that they are hinting at in this particular instance. So next you want to circle around the house and collect all the goodies around it and inside of it. So there's a bunch of different things we want here. In particular, our highlights are the stamina shrooms as well as the summerwing butterflies. This field right here, there's usually like 2 or 3 summerwing butterflies. I was actually kind of shocked that there wasn't any here at this exact time. But as I've come to learn about Breath of the Wild, is it kind of populates the areas in a general area. Like there's, say there's 10 possible spawn locations for the summerwing butterfly, but it'll only spawn like 2 to 3 of them at a time. So there's actually a lot of variance as far as where the exact locations of the items are. So it's kind of pointless to like mark your map super thoroughly for the exact location of an item because it will change over time, as far as collectibles like this anyways. So next, head inside the house, grab all of the spicy peppers that are there, and you can also grab a woodcutter's axe in there if you like. I think this is where the old man places it after he's done chopping trees, actually. And then next, you want to check out the book on the table, which is his diary. He's saying that he would really like to try another spicy meat and seafood fry, but he can't remember. He remembers the title of the dish, but he can't remember all the ingredients. He knows that it has some kind of meat in it, as well as a spicy pepper, but he can't remember what the third ingredient is to make that dish. Now, the title actually totally gives it away since it has seafood in the name, so we need a fish. So any kind of meat, a spicy pepper, and a fish will end up making that dish. If you give that dish to the old man, then he will give you the Warm Doublet, which is our next piece of equipment that we're after. So this little side quest can be completed pretty easily. In order to get a fish, all you have to do is loot the Hyrule bass that are inside the pool in between the tower and the Amon Awa Shrine, which is the one where we got Magnesis to the north. Press the plus button on your controller to pull up your menu, go to the Materials tab, and then select and hold different ingredients. Now you can add more ingredients to hold. You want to hold a raw bird drumstick, a spicy pepper, and a Hyrule bass, and then throw that into the cooking pot to make the recipe that the old man is looking for. Now, as far as the other ingredients, the raw bird drumstick, that's the easiest meat you can get on the Great Plateau. You get this by killing birds. I think there's actually even a couple types here, but they're kind of like chicken size, not like the little sparrows, those and squirrels and stuff. Those don't count. You have to have a little bit bigger thing, so it's more substantial. That's pretty much the only meat that's available here, I think. Meanwhile, peppers, they're in the house. However, there's only a couple of them, so if you waste them, then that's bad. So try to save a pepper for this recipe if you can. Anyways, once you fire that up, talk to the old man. He has a new chat option that says, I cooked something for you. Select that, and he will then give you the Warm Doublet as reward for trading that to him. Now, if you don't have all these ingredients you need for that, or you don't have fish, or you're too lazy to do it, or whatever, then alternatively you can just make cold resistance food or cold resistance elixirs. Elixirs are the the easiest one to make, and that would be just catching some summerwing butterflies and then adding monster parts. And you can do it either way. The butterflies actually give you the most duration. You have to have at least one monster part to make an elixir. So if you have one Bokoblin Fang, ideally, those are a little bit nicer, and you have a whole bunch of them. And then 4 summerwing butterflies would actually be the longest duration you can make. And by the way, if you're unsure like what ingredients do, just look at their description. The in-game description is very clear. It shows you that butterflies are used to make elixirs. It requires monster parts, and it tells you that it makes you feel warm and fuzzy, so you know it's a warm ingredient. So thus, you know it's cold resistance. Now, unfortunately, if you want to do food instead, we just don't really have very many peppers, so the best way to do that would be to have a single pepper and then a whole bunch of regular food. Every, regular apple or shroom or fish you add, each one of those is worth 30 seconds. So if you have, a single pepper and a whole bunch of regular food items, that will be the most duration you can get to use the peppers well that you have. Now, apples, shrooms, and fish can be cooked interchangeably to make you some healing items, and those can all mix and match however you want. It doesn't matter. So here I'm using 2 shrooms and 1 apple. It's fine. It works the exact same way. The title's different, but the amount of hearts it gives you is the same. Occasionally, they can critically cook, and what that means is that you get a bigger bonus. Like this one is just 3 apples. I got 3 hearts out of it. Here's another 3 apples, and this one gives me 6 hearts, I believe. Yeah, see, so this one's critically cooked and it's amazing. So technically you can save scum is what they call it, which means that you save, you cook. If it's a critical, then you save again. If it's not, you load and use your same ingredients again, and that would be a super efficient way of using it. But that's really tedious, so you can do that if you want to, though. Another thing that's really good to make is a bunch of stamina dishes, and this is particularly useful for climbing, and you want to stay at around 2 or 3 stamina shrooms because you want to keep it kind of low. You want to keep it less than a full stamina wheel, and the reason for this is because if this critically cooks, then you want it to be not too much more than a full stamina wheel. Like, for example, you could cook a single courser bee honey and like 2 stamina shrooms to guarantee you're getting, or even just 1 courser bee honey and 1 stamina shroom to guarantee you're getting a full stamina wheel's worth of stamina. But if it critically cooks, then you'll get like 2 full stamina wheels is what it restores, and that's more than you even have. So a nice way to efficiently use the potential chance for it to critically cook is to just cook a little bit less. You can also make restless crickets. Those are very easy to get, by the way. It just requires a single monster part. Just use something cheap, doesn't matter. Restless crickets you can get by using spin attacks in tall grass. You can also make speed potions, and the easiest way to do this is probably to use a hightail lizard. Those are the cheapest, most common option. We do actually have hot-footed frogs, so you might be able to do that if you went out of your way to explore some pools. And then lastly, you can also use rushrooms, although we don't really have very many of those. Anyways, here's me just showing my inventory of all the things I created. I made a lot of cold stuff. But I have 2 pages actually, or well, just a little over 1 page really. So there's the goodies that I got from enemies, but otherwise I made a whole bunch of healing items. Notice they're all pretty small though, like very small amounts of hearts. That's intentional. Meanwhile, just notice that the stamina food, I actually don't care about the hearts those make at all. I literally just care about the amount of stamina they give me, and I want it to be like a little bit less than a full stamina wheel is kind of what I'm aiming for. So cooking is a very confusing thing in Breath of the Wild. They don't explain it very well at all, but that's a quick crash course through it. I'll go into it in more detail later. I just want to keep moving for now though. So real quick, before you move on too much, there is a pitchfork nearby. Make sure you grab this. I actually forgot to grab this at first, and then I realized it. The pitchfork actually surprised me at this point, because I didn't realize... I mean, I remember getting pitchforks before in previous playthroughs. I didn't remember they did this much damage. That's insane. The deal is that... and I don't actually need a woodcutter's axe, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. Woodcutter's axes are totally optional. I actually think they're terrible items, and I will explain more about what I mean about that later. But anyways, I would highly recommend you get rid of any woodcutter's axe you have and replace it with this pitchfork. So spear weapons do like half the damage-ish, or like 2/3 the damage of a one-hander. So just to put it in perspective for you, we've been using like Boko clubs, right? And they do 4 damage. So the Boko spear does 2 damage, which is half the damage. So this is a spear weapon. It should do half the damage of the equivalent in a one-hander. So this does 7 damage, which means that the equivalent one-hander would do something more like 12 or 14 damage. So this is as good as a 12 or 14 damage one-hander. That's a pretty strong. Like, honestly, I would probably make the argument that this is the best weapon on the Great Plateau, which maybe that sounds kind of weird, like a pitchfork, yay, but this is an amazing spear, so you should totally grab this. So real quick, if you like, you can go ahead and sleep at the nearby fire until morning. This just guarantees that it's morning all the time, because at night we also have style enemies to deal with as well, the skeletal enemies, so this just guarantees we don't have to worry about them at all. So moving on, we are going to use bombs to fell these trees instead of the woodcutter's axe. This works the exact same way pretty much, except you just, once again, you just got to make sure that you place the bomb on the opposite side of the tree of the direction you want it to fell from. So in this case, we just make sure we're aiming from this direction and just place a bomb and then walk away and then blow it up. And so, you know, you could use an entire slot for a weapon to have a woodcutter's axe. I think that's completely worthless, because you can just have weapons that do more damage, and instead you can just use bombs to accomplish the same thing. You don't have to do it all that often, so I think just using bombs makes more sense. Up ahead there are some bokoblins. I'm actually super low on arrows, so I really shouldn't be using any more. You'll notice here I threw a bomb off to the left side. The reason is to try and get the bokoblin to flying over to the right side so that his goodies don't fall into the abyss. I want to get his weapon, but also his monster parts is the reason I'm doing that. Yeah, see, look at the damage of that pitchfork, man. It's awesome. So that's a pretty good weapon, and as you can see, like, I killed it way faster than using any other weapon. It's really good. So here I'm using another bomb. Notice that I'm hitting the apple tree, but I put the bomb again on the cliffside so that all the apples as well as the tree falls in the direction of the mountainside instead. And as always, whenever you're felling trees, try to blow it up again so that you can get wood from it as well. Now, I haven't really had a chance to talk about this, but whenever you see cracks in things, then you can use bombs on them. So if there's cracks in a wall, or there is a cracked rocks somewhere, then you want to use bombs on it, and this will usually blow up, and then it reveals a secret. So just whenever you're like exploring around Hyrule, always keep on the lookout for cracked things, because that's just an indication that you need to use bombs. Alright, so our next objective is to climb up this cliff to get to the blue marker on our map, which is where I marked the next shrine. There's a couple different places you can do this, but the easiest place, by far, is just right across from these big trees. They actually do have this breadcrumb trail of mushrooms to tempt you to climb this way as well, but this is definitely the best place because we have all these platforms to restore our stamina. So if you were trying to go further off to the left, where, like above that little cave where we just got those arrows, that is definitely a much harder place to do it. It's possible, but man, it's more difficult. So this is the best place to do it. So you climb, then sit down here, restore your stamina while you're on solid ground, and then climb up to the next platform and just kind of work your way from platform to platform. This area is pretty easy, and basically all you have to do is just take it slow and you'll be nice and efficient with your stamina use. If you want to, you can also dash with X, or they call it jumping, I guess. But if you would jump while you're climbing, it does consume quite a bit of stamina, so it uses a big chunk of it, but it is a little bit faster. But not very efficient stamina-wise, so that's just the thing to know. So if you're worried about your stamina usage, just don't dash at all. Now, one quick tip about that, though, I would recommend you dash at the tail end of your climb, especially if you have just a sliver left. The funny thing is, even though the jump dash requires a lot of stamina to use, if you are at the tail end of, like right before you get to a solid ledge like this right above us, if I were to jump dash to that, then I would climb up. Even if I ran out of stamina, I would still successfully get on there, and then I would start regenerating and it'd be totally fine. So just a quick tip for you, you can always use the jump dash at the very end to guarantee that you're getting to your ledge. So just another little tip to utilize all of your stamina well. And by the way, if it's raining right now, then I recommend you just wait it out. You can see the forecast in the bottom right corner of the screen. We're just underneath where it shows the time. And so if it's going to rain, like just wait until the rain stops. Unfortunately, all the campfires here on the Great Plateau actually go out after when it's raining, so you might have to wait for that before you can change the time of day. But so you shouldn't need any of those stamina foods that we made, so it shouldn't matter that much. But if you are having problems with this, something else you can do actually is you can make a speed buff. And you can do this by having just a single hightail lizard and 4 bokoblin fangs. That'll actually give you a level 1 speed buff for a pretty decent amount of time, actually. And that will increase your climbing speed by 16%. I think a lot of people don't realize it increases climbing and swimming speed as well as movement speed, but speed buffs are awesome. It does it for all categories, and it's really powerful. So even just a rank 1 will help a lot. Actually, the bonus you get from just rank 1 is actually pretty nice. The following ranks, subsequent ranks, aren't really as big of a bonus. All right, here we have the most overpowered rune in the entire game for multiple reasons. This one really lets you break things. Well, I think all of them kind of do in a way. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff with all of these runes, actually. There's something crazy you can do with all of them, but this one allows you to pause time of objects and eventually enemies. So what you want to do is you want to switch to the Stasis rune by pressing up on the D-pad, then move over to select it, and then go ahead and use it on the nearby gear. This allows you to pause the turning bridge so that you can get across, and then meanwhile Stasis will run out after a little bit, and then the thing will continue spinning. So that's how you get across this first puzzle, and Stasis does take a little bit of time to recharge, so just be aware of that. Up ahead we have a boulder that is coming our way, and you can just run past it. Honestly, you don't actually have to use Stasis for this. I think you can just make it by if you're pretty quick. It's a little tight, but it's okay. So I think how they're wanting you to solve these puzzles is actually to use Stasis on the balls. Now, instead, what you want to do with these boulders is you want to actually Stasis it behind you is actually what you want to do. And the reason for this is because the boulders will they reappear when that particular boulder falls down into the abyss. So a new boulder will not fall down until that boulder falls down. So that's why you want to use it behind you, so it's not in your way. If you use it ahead of you, then it's really hard to get it while it's in midair, falling from that circle thing in the ceiling. So you can do that, but man, is it hard to time it well. So it's much easier to do it behind you like that, towards the further down section. Up ahead we have an iron sledgehammer. Now, unlike the woodcutter's axe, I think this is actually a pretty decent item, especially early on. A couple reasons for that. It has very high durability. It can smash through ore very well, and it's also pretty great for using with Stasis. So it's a pretty good weapon overall. So it does extra damage to ore, I believe, so it doesn't take as many hits to break those. So it's a very nice thing to have around. Just in general, it's nice to have a single sledgehammer on you. So up ahead, you want to use Stasis on the stationary boulder and then smack it with weapons in order to make it move. You can actually use bombs and stuff too, technically. You can use all kinds of stuff to build up a charge, and what will happen is actually the direction that you hit it from last is the direction that the charged momentum will go, which is very strange. It's a really odd concept. We're going to be using Stasis a lot throughout the game, and it's just a weird thing to kind of wrap your mind around, but there's all kinds of weird Stasis puzzles that require you to build up a charge and then change the direction at the last minute. It's just something to be aware of. The sledgehammer is one of the best weapons to use for that because it has a really high durability, and it also hits pretty hard, so it's a really great weapon to use with Stasis. So just outside the Owa Daim shrine, there is a pretty obvious puzzle here where we've just completed this, so it's pretty obvious what to do. You want to use Stasis on the boulder and then smack it with a weapon, ideally the iron sledgehammer, and then get the chest that is underneath it to get some goodies. Now, just so you know, too, like, a lot of people online will say that they really like going to the Owa Daim shrine to get an iron sledgehammer, and that's true. It's a pretty tried and true place to get it. However, just as a comment, it is not the most efficient place to get iron sledgehammers at all, not even close. So I actually have a lot of recommendations on different places to get iron sledgehammers, and I will point them out throughout the walkthrough. So, moving on real quick, we're done with everything we had to do here. Now we're just continuing to climb the mountain. The easiest place to get up is actually over here. There's this nice steady incline, so this gets you up higher quite easily. You'll see the temperature is quickly dropping down, and now we need some cold resistance. Now, if you got the warm doublet from the old man, you can wear that. Otherwise, you are going to have to eat some of your other cold resistance food or cold resistance elixir. So I currently drank one of my cold resistance elixirs, which again is just a single Summerwing butterfly and 4 monster parts. In this case, I did use Bokoblin fangs, which have a slightly higher duration, and so this gives me a little over 9 minutes of cold resistance, which is awesome. So up ahead, there's a bunch of enemies in a small encampment that has a bunch of explosive barrels. Now, just so you know, this is a really bad idea, generally speaking, to go into an area where there are enemies with explosive barrels, because they can pick them up and throw them at you. However, just so you know, they only do that when they don't currently hold any weapons. So none of these guys do, so I wasn't really worried about it, and I just walked away. I was actually anticipating, I was trying to just get the goodies inside the wooden chest, because I was worried about the chest blowing up and disappearing if it exploded, was why I was doing. I just thought, oh, I'll just walk in here, grab this, and run away. What I was not anticipating was the fact that the enemies are still chasing after me, and I think the reason for this is because you move slower when you're running on snow. So meanwhile, they're running normal speed, so they just kept following me forever, and I finally just turned around and killed them. So by the way, there's a stat that a lot of people don't understand in Breath of the Wild, and that is the defense stat on shields. So these enemies, for example, have Boko shields, and right in a little bit I'm going to smack a Bokoblin that is looking at me, and it has its Boko shield extended, and I smack it with the iron sledgehammer, and it totally cuts through its defenses and kills it. Even though he's facing me with a shield, it didn't actually matter. And the reason for this is because my iron sledgehammer has 12 damage, and the Boko shield will deflect up to 3 damage, is the idea. It has 3 defense. Meanwhile, I have 12 damage, so that means that the defense stat of the shield is not enough to overcome the power of the weapon I'm using. So that's why you want to use nicer shields. It depends on the enemy you're facing, actually, and vice versa. So in this case, I'm using a powerful enough weapon to cut through its defenses. And sometimes that just means, like, whether or not they get knocked down, for example. It depends on how far over the threshold you are, is how bad, like, rather than just knocking him back versus knocking him over completely, you know what I mean? So he's flat on his back. So you can totally use the boulders up here to kill the enemies below. That's another alternative to that. I think it's a lot easier to just drop a bomb over the edge and then just detonate it to blow up all those explosive barrels. Way easier to do that. So there's a couple different goodies you can get here on Mount Hylia, and one of the things that you can get is a Korok feed off to one side. You can get this optionally if you want to. It's just around the corner. You just pick up a rock, like whatever. There's also a chest that has an amber, and it's being guarded by a blue Bokoblin, so that's a little bit more of a challenge. It does have another one of those spiked Boko clubs, as well as a spiked Boko shield. Now, I'm kind of almost more interested in the shield because that's just a little bit higher defense than what we've used so far. So I'm kind of intrigued to get that. So I'm going to go ahead and kill this guy. It's not a big deal. I'm using bombs to, like, deflect it. And as soon as I do enough damage to knock it down to the ground, I quickly run forward and drop some of my weaker weapons and grab its higher tier ones so that it can't pick it back up. It's just a safety margin thing as part of that. It's a good upgrade to get it ahead of time, but it's just a smart thing so that just in case he does get back up and start doing damage, that he doesn't hurt me as bad. Because like I say, I was mentioning this earlier in the previous video, I think it was, that when you have red Bokoblins, don't have any additional damage bonus, but blue Bokoblins also do 4 more damage just straight up, just because that's the enemy type that it is. So it has 12 damage for the spiked Boko Club, but it also has an additional 4 damage for being a blue Bokoblin. So this guy actually does a total of 16 damage just in general, and so being able to get rid of his high tier weapon is a really smart thing to do that as soon as possible. So you can do the shrines here on the Great Plateau in any order you wish. However, this is most likely the shrine you're going to be doing last, is the one up here on Mount Hylia. Now, if you get to the very tip top of Mount Hylia, at the highest point, you'll actually find the old man here, and he talks about using your scope again to look for getting to high places and using your scope to look for the shrines, and you can mark things with your beacons. Now, that's all well and good. However, one other thing to note, one other highlight as far as going up here is if you do this and you did not cook for him that spicy seafood, meat and seafood stir fry, then instead he will give you the warm doublet now. So this is the second option for getting the warm doublet. And like, honestly, like you look at my cold resistance, I still have 4 minutes left on my elixir, which is a long time. So seriously, the cheapest thing you can do is just find a butterfly and then use some of the monster parts that you have, and then you can just use that for an elixir and then come up here and get the Warm Doublet. So you don't actually have to go hunting for a fish and getting a spicy pepper and all that stuff. Like, it doesn't really matter that much. So because you can just get the Warm Doublet now. So even though it's like more epic to do that side quest and stuff like that, you don't have to, because you can get it pretty easily. So don't stress about it too much if you didn't do that. So by the way, you're probably wondering why I drank the elixir. I was just doing it to show, so I'm showing both methods, both using the warm tunic as well, or the warm doublet, as well as using the cold resistance elixir. But just so you know, those effects do stack. I only need 1 cold resistance, but by wearing the armor and drinking the elixir, I actually have 2 cold resist right now, so I can survive in the coldest climates of Hyrule right now with the buffs that I currently have. Those 2 buffs stack. And that's actually an important thing to know, is you don't have to have like enough armor to have 2 cold resist. You can actually mix and match different parts of gear and potion. So a combination of gear and potions and weapons can actually give you the amount of heat and cold resistance you need. So just a tip for later. Doesn't really matter so much right now, but it will be important later. So point being, I will actually be using all of those cold resistance elixirs that I made. So on top of the wall to the far west side of Mount Hylia, there is actually a chest that is a DLC chest only. So again, if you don't have the DLC, you will not see this chest, but it has 5 bomb arrows in it. Now, whether or not you actually end up using the bomb arrows, they are still pretty valuable because they're a pretty good amount of money. I think you could technically sell them, but I would totally keep them because we will use them to fight a boss later. So here I was trying to very stealthily sneak around so I could get to these explosive barrels. Turns out it totally didn't work. And then I got scared because this other Bokoblin ran up with a flaming weapon. If it comes in contact with those, it's going to blow up. So run away! Except it didn't matter because this other Bokoblin totally just threw one at me anyways, and I took damage regardless. So that was sad. I'm sad though because I really wanted to throw that at them. It was supposed to be, that was my job and you took it from me. Now, by the way, alternatively, like, unless enemies have a weapon you want, then the only reason to defeat them really is to get their monster parts and get anything else, any other goodies they have nearby. So in this case, that's just the seared steak. So basically the seared steak was the only thing of value that was over here. So if you don't want the Bokoblin fangs and horns anyways. So if all you're after is the seared steak, like, really all you have to do is just like run right through the middle of their encampment, steal the seared steak, and then just run away. Unfortunately, the enemies will still chase after you because, as we established a little bit earlier, they will chase after you indefinitely on snow because they're jerks. But anyways, go to the very top and access the Keh Namut shrine. Keh Namut? Keh. I don't think anybody knows how to pronounce these names. I don't think Nintendo knows how to pronounce their names. I seriously think they use some kind of random name generator kind of thing for this. So just a whole bunch of just like consonants and vowels, and that's it. I think what I'll do for this walkthrough is just pronounce it however I think makes the most sense, but otherwise I might just do something that I think is probably not accurate, but sounds cool. I'm gonna do whatever I want, I guess. I don't think there's any actual definitive way to do these things, so if you disagree, feel free to comment on it and let the rage comments going back and forth begin. The battle begins to name the shrines. Oh yes, the internet. So now we have our next shrine, and our new ability is Cryonis, which I think is one of the more interesting abilities we've gotten in a recent Zelda game. I've always been intrigued with water abilities in Zelda games. Like, I've always been intrigued with the idea of having hover boots again, but having them as an equipable item that you can use on an item button, kind of like the iron boots in Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, but maybe instead like it's hover boots that lets you walk on water is one of the features that it does. You can hover over like little cliffs or whatever, but you can also walk on water, so you can run up a raging river. I think that's really interesting. So Cryonis, you want to use it to, on the surface of water, to raise a pillar out of the water, and this can lift things such as that doorway, and you can also use it as a wall to block attacks. So here they have a ranged scout that will constantly shoot at you, so you want to use it as a wall to stop it. You can also use it to lift other objects, such as the enemies right here. There isn't any particular reason to do that, but it is rather amusing. So anyways, you want to just go ahead and run over and attack this guy. My pitchfork is amazing, but it's now almost dead, which is very sad. Now, something else you'll notice is there is actually a hidden alcove right here, and the idea is that you use Cryonis to reach this little ledge where there is a chest containing a weapon. Farmer's pitchfork, I just want you to know, I always loved you. Forever immortalized in the Breath of the Wild walkthrough. But yeah, Cryonis is a super cool ability. It allows you to do some very interesting things. I actually don't feel like Breath of the Wild fully utilizes all the potential puzzle capabilities that this particular ability offers, but it's a very interesting thing. But just try to remember, anytime you have water, try to use Cryonis, always. So water equals Cryonis. Just try to remember it that way, and that way, whenever you see water of any kind, you will use it. Up ahead, we have a teeter-totter. Use Cryonis on one side so you can climb up and reach the top where there is a dude up ahead to get our next spirit orb. So that is actually the final shrine, and that is the end of this particular video. So join me for the next one where we will continue with the Great Plateau and go meet up with the old man. As always, huge thanks to all my Patreon supporters for helping to make this possible. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to throw a like on it, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content just like this. Remember to stay awesome, have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.